Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Fanvil. Today's host is Tommy Lee. He is their Vice President of Sales in North America. Tommy will be presenting today, and if anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and I'll ask them of Tommy at the end of today's presentation. Tommy, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. I am finished for now. You can go ahead and take it on over.
Great. Thank you very much, Julie. I appreciate the introduction. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and happy belated 2020. In one of the intros about the 2020 is Fanvil will be rolling out a brand new IP phone line, namely the XU series IP phones. They come in with a lot of differentiators. We've been selling these solutions in the marketplace, but with this new line that should be in stock already at this webinar is the capability of meeting really all of your basic requirements. And this will, in essence, supplement some of our previous generations that are actually existent within our partner community. And that's just to complement all those that are in stock. But if you need something on the low end as well as the high end, I want to introduce our new XU series and really focus in on what we think are the differentiators in the marketplace. Now, what I want to look at is, I want to excuse the typo, I got 123 versus 121, is I want to focus in on the solution differentiation. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of gigabit or whether they're PoE. In my opinion, all those capabilities are just sort of rudimentary, but all the power things that you need is all stock within the XU. So you don't even have to think about it. Does it have PoE? Yes. Does it have gig? Absolutely. But that's all I'll say about it. Does it have color screen? You'll go ahead and see for yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, the XU series is an upgrade to the series that we already have out in the streets. Now, we don't intend to EOL any of the older series, but what we want to do is provide a series that makes a very simple choice for you in terms of solution selection. Now, granted, if you don't necessarily need all of these new features, you can always upgrade to the or settle for the XU, or if you're looking to save a penny or two, you may want to settle in for some of the older series, which now that it's replaced, I imagine that we could be putting in some promos to get rid of those at a more entry-level price. And of course, I'll highlight the differentiations and the functions of what these phones provide to you as well as your client base. Now, when I talk about the IP phone series, this is the series I'll be talking about. It's really the business desk phones. Primarily, actually, these two are part of the IU, but the X7 as well as the X210 is something that we've been selling within the community and will continue to sell. But in addition to the desk phones, I want to highlight some of the other solutions that we have. Some of the other solutions that we also have endpoints that is really focused in on the hospitality. Even though there are only 2 phones here, this is only a partial list. We also have a third list of phones that provide a lot more between your bathroom type phone or just dial tone to your flat display to give the hotel and hospitality environment the flexibility to move their hotel name as well as extensions on the phone while keeping the paper template to a minimum to this. Coupled with the hospitality solution is Fanvil is also a very large provider of intercom system and SIP door phones. What we have is really commercial models here on both models that are with and without video connections, with or without dial pads, as well as we have models that even allow employees to enter and access with a key card or not. So given what combination of features that you want at the endpoint, chances are Fanvil will also have that. So we have them both for internal use within the office marketplace, and as well as we also have for external use that can handle the harshness of heavy rain, snow, and etc. that to meet the natural environment of outdoor use. Coupled with the door environment that actually works well with our SIP-based environment is a PA2. This PA2 adapter enables anybody with a SIP PBX environment or any SIP PBX to communicate to anything that is analog on the external world. Take, for example, PA or public announcement systems. These systems typically reside in the ceiling and are connected with power amplifiers that are hidden in the thing. And chances are, when you upgrade the phone system, that PA system still works and probably will still work for the next 10 plus years. So why go ahead and upgrade that when you could just use the PA2, that when you upgrade the voice system, you could adopt that SIP-based voice system into your PA system. But not only is it PA, you could look at parking barriers as another item where it requires real-time communication. So when a car gets stuck behind a barrier, there's always a button that you could press to really address the attendee. Well, what you can do is if you upgrade that system to SIP, you could put one of these systems in there and retrofit a button. So when you push it, it'll actually communicate and be able to release the barrier and minimize your cost in upgrading that endpoint to SIP without having to buy a whole brand new system. Coupling all of these pieces together, Fanvil also has what we call FDMS and FDPS systems, setting the alphabet soup aside. What this is a redirection server that many of the business phone community is gone used to allow them to provision these phones out of the box and be able to use their own config files and do very fast and easy deployment. We also have a Fanvil device management system, which also allows them to be able to download their firmware and be able to upgrade it, download it, do resets, etc., and do diagnostics on the phone from one remote location. So all of these systems are put together and provided by Fanvil moving forward. But moving forward from here, I'll be more than happy. I'm just going to focus in on the business phone for the XU space. Let's talk about the characteristics. I only showed 2 of the XU phones on the previous slide, but they could really be divided into 4 different models: X3, 4, 5, and 6. That really all it boils down to. And what we want to do is to keep the menu very simple for you. The X3U is what we look at as the low-end phone, so that people who really don't care about having BLF keys and keystrokes, key system type of functionality, you can use this phone to meet your entry-level requirements. As you build up the requirements all the way to the 6X to the X6U, which then incorporates video codecs, giving you one-way video that enables high resolution. So take example, the video door phones I'm talking about. Some of those units actually have video capability, so that if you were to broadcast that, you can do it in basically VGA quality on our phone displays versus the old JPEG quality. And I'll show you some slides that will give you a good comparison on the differences between the two. Now let's show the series. Now, one of the things I want to show is that everything from the low-end X3U to the high-end Fanvil X6U, they're all color screened. All color screened, no paper, and they all have matching displays to go on. Now, even though you may count 6 different keys on the side, I want everyone to know that with all of these displays, there is 5 cascaded display pages that you can go into. So you may see this key, but it also goes in much further. One of the differentiators that we actually put in is the capability of dividing the SIP account keys to the actual BLF keys that you have down here. What does that really mean from a usability standpoint? If you look at the X5 view, we actually have on the side of the display keys that are really defaulted to SIP accounts. But people who actually use and deploy a lot of these SIP accounts, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Very often when you have one SIP line, you may get 1, 2, if not 3 calls that call in on that line at the same time. But what ends up happening is you end up getting 1, 2, 3 of these buttons enabled all at the same time. And what you can do is separately manage all of these separate keys on a separate window and leave these BLF keys all by themselves, so that your key in and those numbers that you use most often are right there in front of your face. For those who don't have this separate capability, what you end up having happen is that as the buttons go on, you end up having those SIP accounts butt into your key account. So if you have 1 or 2 calls that come in, well, guess what happens? They'll end up taking over those key buttons that are on the side of the phone, and henceforth all those keys end up going away. So we think it's a very user-friendly and a great tactical use for the phone, and makes it very easy for the end user. When I mean easy, if you look at this format, you might find that the actual design sort of mimics a lot of the classic old Panasonic or NEC phones that we're upgrading into SIP, and that the layout actually looks very, very similar. So as a result of that, the end user behavior change is minimized as a result of this potential upgrade. Okay. Now let's talk about X series differentiation. Now, again, I'm not going to talk about the things, but what I wanted to do is just to go over the highlights. Again, all the basics are included. You don't have to ask on the things. All of these things are included without any questions asked, everywhere from the low end to the high end. And on some of the high things, I'll just talk about how we handle SIP accounts. But before I do that, I want to highlight some other feature, which I'll talk about in the future slide. Fanvil also offers service providers the ability to rebrand or OEM our phone models to look at theirs. Keep in mind that Fanvil has always been a very large OEM provider, and it's a big part of our business, but we want to be able to offer that capability to your small, medium, or even the medium-sized capabilities that have the capability to grow to a much larger environment. And we created a model which I think is palatable for a lot of the medium-sized service providers that serve a small regional area to a very large area, to be able to adopt and have another channel to rebrand their own vehicle, their own brand to the end customer without any additional cost to them. As far as warranty is concerned, here's where we also differentiate and provide a 2-year warranty versus most of the competition out there provides a 1-year. Let's talk about SIP. SIP just stands for System Initiation Protocol, which is the standard by all of these endpoints, including the door phone, the PA2, as well as all these phones operate. But the way we actually separate ourselves is our phones have the capability of doing a SIP hub. What is a SIP hub? Well, very often for people who deploy these phones, you have the capability of assigning one extension to, say, one room. And what you can do is you could assign any one of our IP phones, the XU series, to be the master phone. And once you assign that, you could also assign slave phones to that master phone that's in that same room or that same office, or perhaps that same functionality. It could be a receptionist that will ring multiple phones at the same time, and the first one to pick up will pick up the call. I'll get into some of the advantages of that, but then yet this allows the end user to be able to manage one call for one office per room or per department, depending on how they want to do that. HD voice, well, a lot of people put HD voices on their phone, but Fanvil has taken one step further, and we actually incorporated some high-end Harman speakers that are part of our speaker system. Many people out there are very familiar with the quality that Harman speakers provide. We provide that as a part of an input to our actual phones. All of our phones contain Opus. And what is Opus, for those who don't really know? That's a specific video codec for those who actually support it, which allows not only on the high end to support high definition audio, but if you're capable or you're limited to a limited bandwidth situation, we can actually support Opus dynamically. So if the bandwidth goes down, it will actually adjust the performance output of that phone so that you don't get that jittery voice when bandwidth goes down. And as many people know who've actually used voice over the internet, the dynamic range of bandwidth you have can fluctuate on a day-to-day basis, and our phones are far more flexible in being able to allow you to meet those things. Easy provisioning, of course, this is a given, because easy provisioning allows you to get in, deploy your phones, and get out and move on to your next project. But how we also differentiate is that in both the X5U and the 6U, we include Bluetooth capability that are integrated into the actual phone. That saves the end user another $20, $25 of having to buy an external dongle if you want to put Bluetooth to interface to your headset, or as a bonus, a car phone, which I'll talk into a little bit more. Again, a new capability we added to the XU is the IPv6 capability. You know, there's a lot of language out in the marketplace. We're saying eventually IPv4 is going to go out and run out of addresses soon. The IPv6 capability gives you far more future proofing of your solution, so that when the IPv4 addresses go out, 6 will be able to accommodate any addresses that your company may support. High-end user appearance design, we've already talked about that early on, but that's separating the SIP functionalities with the keys. But on our high end, we actually support the H.264 codec on our X6U model that gives you the capability of supporting higher end video. Now let's talk about the specification upgrade. I talked about the 3, 4, 5, 6, and U. Now I want to talk about the difference between what we have in the marketplace that we were selling last year to what we're beginning to sell again now in the year 2020. Let's start with the X3U upgrade. As you can tell, the X3S and SG is a line that we've been selling in the past year and will still continue to sell. But we've gone from the 2 series to the 6 series and as well made some sideline key upgrade. Before, we didn't have any sideline keys and we went up to 3. So even in our low end, we give you the capability of managing 3 separate lines on the side key, even on our low-end unit, and we upgraded our phone book capability from 500 to 100 and went from basically staying at the gig, moving it, and still remaining a gig phone from then till now, but we provide a good color screen moving forward. Again, as we move up in the X4U, you want to use this when you begin to add on the capabilities of the sideline keys. So if you need 3 line keys plus an additional sideline, this is a great phone that gives you the ability to add a USB port as well. What is the addition of the USB port? It gives you the ability to add a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi dongle on this key while giving you the upgraded ability of supporting up to 12 SIP lines versus 6 in the past. Okay. Now let's move into the X5U. And what X5U does is that it increases the X4U capability by giving you 4 keys up at the top and providing you with a much larger display to give you a little bit more clarity. Now, in addition to that, we also provide built-in Bluetooth on the X5U. So if you have Bluetooth capability, this is the phone you want to do, but we maintain that USB so that if you want to use a Wi-Fi dongle and Bluetooth at the same time, this model will give you the flexibility of supporting both in one screen. And then again, we provide you with the additional sideline key, an extra sideline key for the X5. Now, for those who really want more buttons to be visually apparent right up front, you could upgrade to the 6U. What the 6U will do is give you more sideline keys up on the top with a much larger screen, but give you twice the ability of doing that. And keep in mind that this key here gives you 5 pages in addition to all the previous models of those sideline keys. So people who have those speed dial keys will really enjoy the same capability that this will provide. And as I mentioned earlier, this will also have a USB mounting. And by the way, all of these units are wall mountable with a separate adapter. But what this also adds is built-in Bluetooth and the capability of having a built-in video codec to this phone, so that if you were to put in a camera with video capabilities, or even just a camera alone, you could put the IP address into these phones themselves. Now let's talk about the OEM capability. A big part of Fanvil's business is that we provide, OEM solutions to, in fact, much of the large providers that are existing in the marketplace today. How do we do this? Well, we developed really a generic phone that when you look at the X3 and the X5U models, we focus on those 2 particular models to go down for a minimum order quantity of 200 units per order. That's really nothing for a lot of the medium-sized service providers out there, so that if you're interested, we'll be willing to work with you with 0 premium and be able to provide a neutral phone. So where this glass normally goes, we will give you a substitute glass with a cutout, and that we will actually provide a separate banner to you separately that you could put your logo here, and so that instead of Fanvil, it'll actually list your logo on the top. Not only is it on the top, but as well as the labeling on the phone, as well as the container, it'll actually be all genericized, so that when a person picks up the box, it's actually looking like you're the one, that it's actually your phone going into the marketplace. How is it software-wise? Even the boot-up phone, which by default has the Fanvil brand, But if you're interested in putting your own brand, we actually genericize this to actually list a generic brand name, or you could put your own brand name when you customize this phone for you through your own config server, which you can do on our provisioning services. Even when you look at the user interface model, the Fanvil brand can also keep in Fanvil if you want to maintain the Fanvil, or you could upgrade that to your own model should you want to do so in the future. But it'll all be generic for the phones that you want to do. But what's obvious to the end customer, because end customers don't look at the interface module, is that they see your brand versus our brand. Either way works for us, and you can be more than happy to speak to our partners that know a little bit more about this information. Let's talk about the highlight and functionality, which really differentiates our phone from the marketplace. I talked a little bit earlier about Wi-Fi connectivity. It exists in both the 4, 5, and 6U. It's also supported by many of the others phones as well, but for cases that have poor wiring, we want to let you know that this does exist, and we have an actual Wi-Fi dongle that we sell so that there's full compatibility, that you can just plug it in and there's no questions asked on whether or not it works with this phone or not. Here's a quick two-step, what I call a quick cookbook model on how to really plug in the Wi-Fi adapter. This is not meant to be a how-to provision, but just gives you the 1-2-step capability. And by the way, a copy of this presentation will be available through Julie McDonald or myself. Just go ahead and ask her for a copy, and she'll be more than happy to share a copy with you. And this is just a way to get it connected. Another way is the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. Now, available in the 4, 5, 6, and U, 5 and 6 has it integrated. Everybody thinks about putting in Bluetooth because yes, absolutely, you can support your head, you can answer phones and all that. But one of the things that we want to do is not only do we add Bluetooth capability, but we also provide other endpoints as well. Here's another two-step guide on actually how to show to put in a headset, pairing a headset with your phone as well. And again, this is something that gives you a quick 2-point item that tells you how to do our phones with headsets. Now let's talk about car phone capability. This is really great because everyone on this call likely have 1 or 2, if not more, mobile phones. But what you can do that's unique is be able to pair your mobile phone with our Fanvil Bluetooth capability. And what I mean by that is those who are fortunate enough to own a car that has Bluetooth capability, as long as you step into your car, your phone will automatically pair up so that if you were to receive a call, it'll automatically pick up by the Fanvil phone and be able to use its higher end Harman speaker as an auxiliary unit to your mobile phone, so that, let's face it, the speaker capability of most mobile units is pretty tinny because the speaker is so small. But now that you've paired up the phone when you're in range, you can now speak on your speakerphone if that's what you want to do. Now, not only can you do that, but you could assign one of these side keys on the side of this display to actually mimic one of the keys of your mobile phone. So if you wanted to dial and not necessarily go through your touch screen of your phone, you can actually use the dial pad on your phone to dial through and make your mobile phone a separate line key in addition to your other SIP keys, so that it gives you that added capability and flexibility to make calls through your mobile line on your phone and using your mobile device as a separate line in your phone. That's a very popular unit and many people who want to add that level of flexibility to their mobile units. Now let's talk about video preview. As you know, many people out there who know about SIP, you have to actively engage in a SIP discussion to really see who's on the other line. Well, the whole idea about video preview, which is another unique feature about our phone, is being able to see the person behind the camera before you actually engage in a call. If that person behind the camera is very suspicious, you may want to automatically call the police in advance. If there's somebody that's trespassing or they're not supposed to be at where you're at, well, that capability exists with our phones in being able to do a video preview. And what that means is that you can actually see who is actually present there before the actual call engages. Once you encounter the call, they'll likely be able to talk to you and you can talk to them, but by that time, it's better off for the business to be able to see who's at the door before they engage in a conversation. This is a good discussion on how it looks like between non-high rev versus something that supports a VGA graphics, and you can tell the graphics is just far more higher end, which is supported on the X6U. This is just a 1-2 method on how to put in video on using one of our functional keys on our phone. And it's really as simple as taking the function key and putting the IP address in one of the keys. And what you can do is just put in the IP address so that you can just use a key, press the button, and you can actually see who's actually at that video camera, and use a separate key to maybe click off a relay to answer the door or open the gate for that person. And this phone gives you that capability to kind of do that. Let's talk about call recording. Call recording is very big if you're selling into hospitals for the case of HIPAA, or primarily attorneys. Attorneys like to record many of their calls because it goes on to record. And our phone gives you the capability of storing it locally on the network or any third-party SIP server that you have available on your phone, so that these three capabilities, where you have a flash drive, you can plug it into the USB port that's on the phone, and it will be able to set up and record recordings to it. Or if you have a PBX that actually records it on itself, then you can actually configure the phone to forward all that recording onto a third-party server or PBX that has that that capability. So that flexibility exists in call recording. Here's a SIP hotspot that I talked about earlier in my presentation. What you have is one phone or any of these phones that could be classified as a master. So you assign the say in room 301, this is hotel room 301. This will be assigned one extension with one phone. Then you can assign other extensions. This could be 402, 302, and 502, but you can actually assign these as sort of hub spots where if this phone will ring, it'll automatically ring both phones at the same time. And if this other phone who happens to be nearby can pick up the call and be able to answer a call on behalf of somebody else. Where else is this handy? In the case of hospitality, you can actually call in on one line and be able to have the other phone in the bathroom ring at the same time as well, without having to deploy two separate IP accounts. And you don't know which one is the bathroom, you don't know which one is the main room, etc. It just makes things very, very simple for the deployment, people who are integrating this into the unit, and being able to manage all of these systems using just one account. Now, one of the differentiators is buttons, and one of the things that has really set Fanvil aside is our ability to support numerous buttons on the phone. Now, for those who really like to sit up front, we actually have not only double on the X6U, but we have the X210, which actually encloses two sidecars, one on top of each other on one single platform. And what do you get by that? Because we actually integrate this all on one platform, cost-wise, it costs just as much to buy this one unit than it is to cost a separate high-end desk phone coupled with a sidecar. When you combine them together, this gives you twice the capability, in addition to 3 separate windows on all the buttons that one can end up having, and also includes the high-end video as well as the integrated Bluetooth features that the XU series introduces as well. So this is a great phone if you want someone who really desires many, many buttons as well as high-end functionality. On the opposite end, we want to talk about a more traditional phone. We have a much large screen phone if this is what you want to go for, but one of the things that this lacks is the actual buttons, because this is a touch screen phone that gives you the touch screen capability. But one thing that we also have is not only does the X7, we have the X7C, which is also the button version. So sacrificing this large screen, we have a smaller screen that gives you buttons on the side of each of the screens that if you want to do a button version, then you can have those things work, but it gives you sort of the aesthetic look of this is the type of style that you want to go for as well. And both of these styles are available through Fanvil, but if you want buttons, we're very unique in giving the XU series to do that. Now, this is my last slide, and what I want to do is you can work with our partners to have this promotion between November and March. We have 2 bundling capabilities where we can actually bundle an X5 and an X3 together for your cost of just $95. This is just an NFR sample, not for sale, and that it gives our resellers as well as our integrators the capability of bundling both of these phones and testing them out without necessarily having to do a high risk on your end to buy them at actual cost. So We provide this channel to give you sample capability. And we also have a higher end where you can do the X4U and X6U for 125 and the X3 and 5 for 95. Both the original SRP is 331 and 256, so this is a great savings to you overall. That's kind of all I have. In my last slide, I'm just going to go into kind of questions and answers, and please feel free to put in your questions to the question mark on your prompt, and Julie will be more than happy to say any questions you have to me, and I'll try to answer as best I can. Thank you very much for your time.
Tommy, thank you so much for that presentation. We enjoyed it very much. And yes, I do have some questions for you. Let's go ahead and get started. The first one here, regarding your hospitality phone models, does Fanvil offer tech support for these customers, either urgent tech support or perhaps 24/7 tech support?
Absolutely. In fact, even with the hospitality models or any of the models, you know, I'm here there's two vehicles. If you need to speak to a live person, I'm sort of the first tier of contact. You know, I can address a lot of the higher level technical questions, and then if I don't get them, we also have staff overseas which work multiple shifts, so that when you send something in that's kind of overlaps, very often when you call in or spend later in the evening, there are people that are technical team that are located internationally that can answer you via email. But I'm based here in California and can be your first tier contact, and I could likely minimize many of the higher level calls that people get. You know, I get calls very often on how do you get a provisioning server in place? How do you do that? Those are the type of things that I can really address up front, you know, and you can give me a call. For those who really want my email address, you can contact me directly at Tommy, TOMMY.LEE@fanvil.com.
Excellent, Tommy. Thank you so much. Next question here for you. Does Fanvil offer a controller to manage each device and their respective locations?
Yes, we do. In fact, one of the things I mentioned earlier on the slides was the FDPS and FDMS capability. So the FDPS, which is our provisioning service, that's just a redirection server alone, and we provide both of those services free of charge to our reseller. And that gives that reseller or the integrator that capability of being able to say, this phone belongs to me. So when I take out that phone, you can load the MAC address of the phone onto the server. So when the server boots up, you can actually have that phone reconfigured to whatever configuration server that integrator wants and can automatically deploy, so that they can have out-of-the-box experience. So the answer is yes.
Excellent.
And the FDMS actually is a management server which gives them the capability to also download specific firmware and perhaps config files onto that phone automatically without necessarily having to come up with one on their own.
Thank you, Tommy. Next question here for you. For the XU series phones, do the devices come with its own power supply?
No, they don't. One of the things that we have, they all are PoE, so that it does require a PoE switch, but for those who don't have a PoE switch, we also sell power supplies as an auxiliary. One of the things we found out going through is that due to the big growth of PoE switches and the popularity and the cost down of PoE switches, we find that many of these power supplies do end up collecting in a bin for very large deployments. And when we include them, it creates a lot of waste, and it's sort of our way to be sort of environmentally friendly in eliminating the power supply to it. So for a lot of these phones, they do include it. I think actually the large X210, we actually include the power supply in that large model. But you know, I may be going extended, but I think for the high-end phone, for that model we do, but on all the other ones, on the XU model, they're external and an option.
Thank you for that, Tommy. Next question here for you. Would there be any chance for the XU series phones to work wirelessly?
Absolutely. To work wirelessly, we also sell a Wi-Fi dongle along with these phones, so that if the integrator or the project manager encounters an office that doesn't have a cable going to a location, but they do have Wi-Fi capability, we sell a Wi-Fi dongle that has been fully tested with our phones. So you just pop them in, and then you go through that 1-2-step process. We also have videos on YouTube that give you that capability of putting in a Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth dongle on our phone, so that the phone will then be able to connect to your network, but then you'll also have to buy an external power supply to give it power. We're able to connect to the network wirelessly, but we can't provide power wirelessly, obviously.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Next question here for you. Regarding a 200 phone minimum order for customization,
Yep.
Would one be able to change the color of the phones?
Well, the color of the actual plastic will be the same color, but what you can change is the background color of the actual screen. You know, you raise a very good point. Now, when you want to talk about customization and minimizing custom behavior, these LEDs have green, red, or yellow. Now, very often, depending on what phone you're upgrading from, sometimes people have a red-green light, a red-yellow light, or a red blinking light. One of the things Fanvil is capable of doing that gives you the flexibility of actually showing what the default blinking light is. And that's a capability that's very unique to Fanvil, so that if you wanted that green blinking light to be a red blinking light or defaulted to a yellow blinking light, you could have that. And what that does is it just minimizes the behavior change of your end user client, because very often people change. And again, it's one of those things you want to do. But in terms of the phone plastic, the plastic remains the same, but what you can do is change the background screen if you want to. So from a soft change, you could change the display background, but the plastic background remains the same.
Thank you very much for that, Tommy. Can you tell us a little bit, if we go to your website, can we find some links for training and any other details on your website regarding the series phones?
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that I always volunteer to do is this webinar is going to go to the general public. And what I tend to do is that for reps that are interested, I am willing to do a one-on-one webinar along with you so that I can customize the pieces that you need to know, because these phones go into a very complicated environment, and that some people are just starting off and some people just want to run with it and know the endpoints. But because of that big variance, there's no one module that teaches everybody. So what I'd like to do is to establish a one-on-one webinar with that integrator or with that one person to kind of give them the know-hows up front, and then from there, if they're interested in the slide, that's something that we can arrange through ourselves or perhaps even through our partner to provide that partner training to our end users and our end integrators that are out there interested in deploying Fanvil phones.
Tommy, thank you so much for answering all those questions for us today, and thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if anyone wishes to view any of the products mentioned here today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And please remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so you can view it again. Tommy, thank you so much for all the information and your presentation today. We very much enjoyed it. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tommy.